November 7th, 1944. A shattered ridgeline near Schmidt-Hurtgen Forest. The air is a frozen razor, smelling of churned earth, wet pine, and the bitter cordite of a battle that has just gasped its last breath. For Corporal Frank Sutton, medic with the 29th Infantry Division, the silence that follows the storm is always the loudest sound. It's a dead quiet, punctuated by the groans of the wounded and the metallic clink of M1 Garand's being cleared. Rain, thin and merciless, slicks the mud into a grasping paste that pulls at his boots with every step. The world is 100 shades of gray and brown. His job begins when the shooting stops. He moves through the wreckage of what was, an hour ago, a German strongpoint. It's a hellscape of splintered trees and collapsed bunkers, the earth torn open by American artillery. His Red Cross armband is a smear of mud, his helmet heavy, his face a mask of weary professionalism. You learn to build walls inside your head. You focus on the work, the pressure bandages, the syrettes of morphine, the quiet words of assurance to boys who look far too young to be dying in a German forest. He's checking on a private from Charlie Company, a kid named Miller with a piece of shrapnel in his shoulder, when the prisoners are brought in. They emerge from a deep dugout, hands clasped on their heads, their faces a mixture of defiance, fear, and utter exhaustion. They are a motley collection. Old men of the Volkssturm with ill-fitting coats and haunted eyes. A handful of hardened veterans, their faces grim, their Waffen-SS tunics torn and stained. And then among them, Frank sees her. She can't be more than 18. Her uniform is that of a Flakhelferin, an anti-aircraft auxiliary, the Luftwaffe eagle still visible on her gray jacket. Her blonde hair is matted with dirt and rain, plastered to a face that is pale and sharp-boned. But it's her eyes that snag his attention. They are a startling, furious blue, and they burn with a hatred so pure it seems to generate its own heat in the freezing air. While the men around her look beaten, she looks unbroken. She looks like she would kill them all with her bare hands if given the chance. Sergeant Davies, a bulldog of a man from Pittsburgh, is shouting orders, herding the prisoners into a line. Get 'em searched. Check for any hidden weapons. I want 'em ready to move in 5. Frank finishes patching up Miller, gives him a slap on the good shoulder, and tells him to head for the collection point. He watches the prisoners. His eyes are trained to see injury, the subtle tells of pain, the way a man favors a leg, the grimace he tries to hide, the hand that instinctively hovers over a wound. He scans the line of gray uniforms, a man with a crude bandage on his arm, another limping heavily, standard battlefield stuff. His gaze returns to the girl. She stands ramrod straight, her chin up, her eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the American soldiers, as if they are nothing more than a temporary inconvenience. But something is wrong. Frank sees it in the slight tremor in her hands, the almost imperceptible sway of her body. And then, as Sergeant Davies gives one of the prisoners a rough shove to get him moving, the line shuffles forward. The girl takes a step. Her body goes rigid. Her lips, already pale, turn white. She catches herself before she can stumble, her face contorting for just a split second in an expression of such searing agony that Frank feels a sympathetic jolt. He's seen that look before. It isn't the pain of a fresh bullet wound. It's something older, deeper, something that has been festering. She quickly schools her features back into a mask of contempt, but the mask is cracked. Frank saw what was underneath. He watches her as the GIs begin their cursory searches. She endures the pat-down with stoic fury, her body held unnaturally stiff. She moves like a marionette with a tangled string, each movement calculated and pained. The other prisoners are just a collection of defeated soldiers, but this girl, she is a puzzle wrapped in a cold, quiet rage. Frank picks up his medical bag, the worn leather heavy in his hand. Duty calls. The American wounded come first. But as he turns away, he can't shake the image of her face, the fleeting, unguarded glimpse of a pain so profound it seemed to have a life of its own. The march to the rear echelon collection point is a descent into a deeper circle of misery. The rain hardens, turning from a drizzle into a cold, persistent downpour that soaks through wool and canvas, chilling a man to his marrow. The path is a river of mud, littered with the detritus of battle, discarded ration tins, brass casings, the occasional abandoned helmet lying half-submerged like a steel skull. The world is reduced to the sound of squelching boots and the ragged breathing of exhausted men. Corporal Frank Sutton walks near the rear of the column, a silent shepherd for the walking wounded from his company. But his attention keeps drifting to the smaller column of German prisoners being escorted alongside them. He can see the girl, Liesel, though he doesn't yet know her name. She is positioned in the middle of the group, a small gray figure almost swallowed by the larger men around her. The GIs guarding them are just as miserable as everyone else, their shoulders hunched against the rain, their faces grim. There is no conversation, just the plodding, rhythmic misery of the march. Every 100 yards or so, the column halts as the men up front negotiate a particularly treacherous patch of ground or a fallen tree. During one of these pauses, Frank watches her. She stands with her weight shifted almost entirely onto her right leg. Her left leg is held straight, the knee locked, as if bending it is an impossibility. Her face is turned away from him, but he can see the tension in the line of her jaw, the rigid set of her shoulders beneath the damp jacket. You can't hide pain from a man who spends his days cataloging its every expression. She is putting on a performance of strength, but her body is betraying her with every breath. A young GI, barely old enough to shave, prods one of the older German prisoners with his rifle muzzle. "Schnell, schnell, old man, move it!" The old man stumbles, catching himself on the arm of the man next to him. The girl turns her head, and for a moment her eyes meet Frank's across the 20 feet of mud that separates them. The raw hatred is still there, but now it's diluted with something else, a desperate, cornered animal fear. She sees him looking, sees the red cross on his helmet, and her expression hardens again, a door slamming shut. She turns her face forward, her focus absolute. Frank shifts the weight of his medical bag. It's not his concern. She's a prisoner of war. She'll be seen by a doctor at the main camp. His job is to look after American boys. He repeats it to himself like a mantra. Yet he can't look away. He has seen gangrene. He has seen the insidious creep of infection, the way it can turn a simple wound into a death sentence. He has smelled its sickly sweet odor on men who thought they had survived the battle, only to be killed by a tiny piece of metal and the dirt it carried with it. The way she is moving, the pallor of her skin under the grime, it all points to something deeply wrong, something that has been ignored for far too long. The trail narrows, forcing them single file through a dense patch of skeletal, black-limbed trees. It's here she falters. Her left foot catches on an exposed root. She doesn't cry out. The sound she makes is a sharp, guttural intake of breath, a sound of pure, reflexive agony that is cut off almost as soon as it begins. Her body pitches forward. She throws her hands out to break her fall, but her movements are slow, uncoordinated. She collapses into the mud, not with a thud, but with a strange, boneless slump, as if the pain has finally short-circuited her entire nervous system. One of the guards barks at her in broken German. "Aufstehen, get up!" She tries. Frank watches her push herself up with her arms, her face buried in the muck. Her whole body is trembling violently. She gets to her knees, but she cannot seem to find the strength or the will to put any weight on her left leg. She stays there, kneeling in the cold mud, her head bowed, her fight seemingly extinguished, replaced by a shuddering, silent battle against a foe she can no longer hide. Frank takes a step toward her, an involuntary motion. His duty and his humanity are at war. The guard raises his rifle, waving him back. "Stay with your own, medic. We'll handle this." But Frank doesn't move. He just watches the girl, and he knows, with a certainty that chills him more than the rain, that if she stays in that mud, she is going to die. They reached the temporary prisoner collection point just as the bruised purple light of dusk began to fail. It was nothing more than a hastily cordoned-off section of a ruined farmyard, a muddy pen surrounded by concertina wire and shivering GIs. The prisoners were herded inside, their shoulders slumped, the last vestiges of fight washed out of them by the cold and the long march. Except for her. She had been hauled to her feet by two of her fellow prisoners and had half limped, half been dragged the last mile. Now she stood apart from the others, leaning against the stone wall of a collapsed barn, her face a white mask in the gloom. Frank finished his work. He had checked on the American wounded, changed a few dressings, and sent the more serious cases on with the next truck heading back to the field hospital. But his thoughts kept returning to the girl. He approached Sergeant Davies, who was trying to light a damp cigarette with a Zippo lighter that refused to spark. "Sarge, that girl, the Flockhelferin, she's hurt bad." Davies finally got a flame and took a long drag, the orange tip glowing brightly in the twilight. He exhaled a plume of smoke. "They're all hurt one way or another, Sutton. She's a Kraut. She'll be processed with the rest of them." "No, I mean, she needs medical attention now," Frank insisted. "She collapsed on the march. I think she's got a serious infection." Davies squinted at him through the smoke. He was a good NCO, but he was worn down to the nub. "You see a wound on her?" "No, but the way she's moving." "Look, Sutton," Davies cut him off, his voice flat with exhaustion. "My orders are to keep them secure until the MPs get here. We start making exceptions, they all start groaning and clutching their bellies, trying to get a soft bed. She's walking, ain't she?" "Barely," Frank countered. "Just let me take a look. 5 minutes. If it's nothing, I'll leave it be." The sergeant sighed, a sound of profound weariness. He looked over at the girl, a small, defiant shape against the ruined wall. "Fine, 5 minutes. But if she tries anything, you yell, and don't turn your back on her." Frank nodded, grabbed his aid bag, and walked across the muddy yard. The other prisoners watched him with dull, incurious eyes. As he got closer, the girl's head snapped up, her blue eyes, wide in her pale face, fixed on him. They were filled with a mixture of alarm and pure venom. He stopped a few feet away, holding his hands up slightly to show they were empty. "Medic," he said, pointing to the red cross on his sleeve. "I want to help. You are hurt." He tapped his own leg. "Wounded? Verwundet?" She said nothing. Her jaw was clenched so tightly a muscle jumped along her cheekbone. She pushed herself away from the wall, trying to put more distance between them, but the movement caused a fresh wave of pain to wash over her features. She swayed, her breath hissing between her teeth. Frank took a slow step forward. "Please," he said, his voice low and calm. "Let me look." Her reply came in a torrent of harsh, guttural German. It was a flood of angry, terrified words he couldn't understand, but the meaning was clear. "Leave me alone. Don't touch me. Get away from me, American dog." She was building a wall of words, a fortress of defiance around herself. He could see the panic rising in her eyes. She was a captured soldier, a young woman alone and surrounded by the enemy, and he was an enemy soldier approaching her with unknown intentions. To her, his red cross meant nothing. He tried again, using simple gestures. He pointed to his bag, then to her leg. He mimed wrapping a bandage. He kept his voice soft, trying to project a sense of calm he didn't entirely feel. Other GIs were starting to watch now, their curiosity piqued. "What's the holdup, Doc?" one of them called out. "She giving you trouble?" The girl's eyes darted toward the other soldiers, and the fear in them intensified. She was trapped. Frank realized he had to get her away from the prying eyes, away from the audience. There was a small canvas-covered supply tent a few yards away, offering a sliver of privacy. "Come," he said, gesturing toward the tent. "Here, private." She shook her head violently. He took another step, and this time she flinched back, pressing herself against the cold, wet stone of the wall as if she could melt right into it. He knew he had only one option. Pushing down a sense of unease, he reached out, not to grab her, but to gently take her arm. The moment his fingers made contact with the rough wool of her sleeve, she exploded. She let out a choked cry and tried to wrench her arm away, her other hand coming up, fingers curled like claws. She was all sharp angles and terrified fury, a cornered cat ready to fight to the last. Frank held on, his grip firm but not bruising, and began to guide her, half pulling, half supporting her toward the tent, her stream of furious German washing over him as he pushed aside the canvas flap and brought her into the dim, claustrophobic